Ladies and gentlemen, there is a terrifying possibility that most people never want to confront. You could spend your entire life becoming successful at a life you never truly wanted. You could climb the ladder. You could collect the titles. You could make the money. You could earn the applause. You could impress people who barely know you. You could become everything society told you to become. And one quiet morning, when the noise finally stops, you could look into the mirror and ask, "Who am I?" That question can be more frightening than failure, because failure tells you that something did not work. But success can sometimes hide the fact that you were walking in the wrong direction. Ladies and gentlemen, today I do not want to talk to you merely about achieving success. I want to talk to you about becoming successful without losing yourself in the process. Because success is not simply about reaching a destination. It is about discovering the person who is capable of making the journey meaningful. We live in a world obsessed with visible achievement. We measure, we rank, we compare, we count followers, we count money, we count degrees, we count houses, cars, promotions, awards, accomplishments. But there are things that cannot be counted. How much courage did it take for you to get out of bed during the hardest season of your life? How many times did you forgive? How many times did you begin again? How much wisdom did your suffering give you? How deeply did you love? How honestly did you live? How many people became stronger because you were present? How many times did you choose integrity when nobody would have known if you had chosen otherwise? These things may never appear on a resume, but they may be the truest measurements of a life. We need a deeper definition of success. Because if success means only getting what you want, then what happens when what you want is not good for you? If success means only becoming rich, what happens if wealth makes you miserable? If success means only being admired, what happens when admiration disappears? If success means only winning, what happens when you lose? A mature understanding of success must go deeper. Successes is not merely external achievement. Successes is the alignment between who you are, what you value, and how you live. That alignment does not happen automatically. It requires courage. And courage begins with self-confrontation. Most people spend enormous energy trying to understand the world while avoiding the one person they have to live with every second of every day: themselves. They can tell you what is wrong with everyone else. They can analyze society. They can criticize their boss. They can blame their parents. They can blame the economy. They can blame the government. They can blame their partner. They can blame luck. But self-awareness asks a more difficult question. What part of this life is mine to take responsibility for? That question is powerful, because it gives you something blame cannot give you: power. If everything is someone else's fault, then your life is in someone else's hands. But if you can identify what belongs to you, you can begin changing it. Maybe you cannot control where you started, but you can influence where you go. Maybe you cannot change what someone did to you, but you can decide what you do with what happened. Maybe you cannot erase your mistakes, but you can extract wisdom from them. Maybe you cannot control the opinions of other people, but you can control whether you allow those opinions to define you. That is where personal power begins, not with controlling the world, with becoming responsible for yourself. There is an ancient psychological truth hidden inside the human experience. What we refuse to face often gains power over us. If you refuse to acknowledge fear, fear can secretly dictate your decisions. If you refuse to acknowledge insecurity, you may spend your life trying to prove yourself. If you refuse to acknowledge anger, it may emerge in ways you do not understand. If you refuse to acknowledge your need for approval, you may become a prisoner of other people's opinions. If you refuse to acknowledge your weaknesses, you cannot strengthen them. This is why self-knowledge is essential to success. You must be willing to enter the uncomfortable rooms of your own mind. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What do I really want? Why do I keep giving up? Why do I need everyone to approve of me? Why does another person's success threaten me? Why do I procrastinate? Why do I sabotage opportunities? What am I pretending not to know? Those questions may hurt, but they can also liberate you. Because the truth can be painful, but living unconsciously can be far more expensive. Think of the person who repeatedly says, "I have bad luck." Maybe they do experience difficult circumstances, but perhaps they also repeat patterns they have never examined. They choose the same kind of relationships. They avoid the same opportunities. They make the same financial mistakes. They react to criticism in the same way. They quit whenever progress becomes uncomfortable. And because the pattern is unconscious, it feels like fate. But once you become conscious of the pattern, something changes. You can interrupt it. That is one of the great gifts of awareness. What you can see, you can begin to change. And that is why your first victory may not be visible to anyone else. Your first victory may be realizing that you no longer have to be controlled by the person you used to be. Ladies and gentlemen, success is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more fully yourself. There is a difference. The world will constantly give you models of what it believes you should become. It will tell you what success looks like. It will tell you what beauty looks like. It will tell you what wealth looks like. It will tell you what status looks like. It will tell you what happiness looks like. But if you never examine those definitions, you may spend your life chasing borrowed dreams. You might wake up one day with everything you were told to want and nothing you actually value. So ask yourself, what matters to me? What kind of person do I want to be? What contribution do I want to make? What kind of relationships do I want to build? What would make me respect myself? What would make my life meaningful? Those questions are not distractions from success. They are the foundation of it. Because the greatest achievement is not achieving something impressive. The greatest achievement is creating a life you can inhabit with integrity. Now, that does not mean you should stop dreaming big. Dream big. Build, docrete, compete, improve, earn, lead, invent, take risks, set ambitious goals. But know why you are doing it. Do not chase success simply because you are terrified of feeling insignificant. Do not chase money. simply because you want to prove that you are worthy. Do not chase attention because you are afraid of being unseen. Do not chase achievement because you are trying to silence an old voice that told you you were not enough. Because if you build your entire life around proving your worth, there will never be enough proof. One achievement will demand another. One promotion will demand another. 1 million will demand the next. One compliment will require another. And you will become exhausted from trying to convince yourself that you deserve to exist. Your worth cannot be permanently secured by external achievement. Achievement is valuable, but it is not your identity. You are more than your resume, more than your income, more than your mistakes, more than your appearance, more than your failures, more than your successes. There is a human being beneath all of those labels. Get to know that person. Because the more deeply you know yourself, the less desperate you become for the world to tell you who you are. And that creates a strange kind of freedom. You can work hard without begging for applause. You can succeed without becoming arrogant. You can fail without becoming worthless. You can receive criticism without collapsing. You can receive praise without becoming addicted to it. You can walk your own path. That is strength. But the path will not always be easy. In fact, if you pursue anything meaningful, difficulty is almost guaranteed. There will be days when you question yourself. There will be days when the dream feels ridiculous. There will be days when someone more talented passes you. There will be days when your effort produces little. There will be days when you wonder whether it is worth continuing. And those days matter. Because success is not revealed when everything is working. Success is revealed when things are not working. Anybody can believe in themselves when everyone else believes in them. The real test comes when the room is silent, when the application is rejected, when the business loses money, when the relationship ends, when the exam goes badly, when the opportunity goes to someone else, when your plan collapses. That is when you discover what you are made of. And here is the secret. You do not need to feel powerful to act powerfully. You can be afraid and still move. You can be uncertain and still decide. You can be disappointed and still continue. You can be exhausted and still take one more step. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes courage is a whisper that says, "Try again tomorrow." Sometimes courage is simply refusing to quit today. Think about the people whose stories inspire you. Most of their stories are not stories of uninterrupted victory. They are stories of persistence. They fell. They failed. They were criticized. They were rejected. They made mistakes. They changed direction. They started again. The difference was not that they never encountered darkness. The difference was that they learned how to walk through it. You must learn the same skill, because there will be chapters in your life that you did not choose. But you can still choose how you read them. A painful chapter does not have to become a meaningless chapter. Sometimes the most difficult chapters develop the deepest characters. You may not understand the value of your struggle while you are inside it. But years later, you may look back and realize, that experience changed me. That failure made me wiser. That rejection redirected me. That difficult season taught me who I was. This does not mean suffering is automatically good. It means human beings have the extraordinary capacity to create meaning from suffering. That capacity can transform a wound into wisdom. And wisdom is one of the highest forms of success, because knowledge tells you what is true. Wisdom helps you know what to do with it. You can know how to make money and still destroy your life. You can know how to win an argument and still lose a relationship. You can know how to build a company and still fail to build yourself. You can know how to attract attention and still feel invisible inside. Wisdom asks a deeper question: what is worth doing? And that question matters because time is finite. Every yes is also a no. Every hour you give to one thing is an hour you cannot give to something else. So success requires not only effort, it requires discernment. You must learn what deserves your energy. You must learn what deserves your attention. You must learn what deserves your sacrifice. Not every opportunity is your opportunity. Not every battle is your battle. Not every opinion deserves your response. Not every desire deserves to be obeyed. Not every door needs to be opened. Success sometimes means saying no. No to distraction. No to destructive habits. No to people who repeatedly undermine your values. No to the need for constant approval. No to excuses. No to the comfortable life that keeps you from becoming who you could be. And saying no can be difficult because the human mind loves comfort. Comfort is seductive. It tells you, stay here. You can start tomorrow. You deserve a break. Everyone else is doing it. You are tired. You are not ready. Sometimes those statements are true, but sometimes they are simply the voice of avoidance, wearing the clothing of reason. You must learn the difference. Rest when you need rest. But do not confuse rest with surrender. Move slowly when necessary. But do not confuse slow progress with no progress. Change direction when wisdom requires it. But do not confuse temporary difficulty with permanent impossibility. This is where discipline becomes essential. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is self-respect expressed through action. When you say, "I will do this," and then you do it, you teach yourself that your word means something. That creates trust within yourself. And self-trust is powerful. Imagine living in a mind where you cannot trust yourself. You promise to wake early, then repeatedly ignore your promise. You promise to study, then spend hours scrolling. You promise to exercise, then constantly negotiate with yourself. You promise to stop a destructive habit, then return to it. Eventually, your mind learns, this person does not keep promises. That damages confidence. But the reverse is also true. Keep small promises, then larger promises become possible. Wake up when you said you would. Finish what you started. Practice the skill. Do the workout. Read the book. Make the call. Complete the assignment. Sieve the money. Tell the truth. And gradually, something changes. You begin to believe yourself. That is confidence, not empty positive thinking. Evidence. Evidence that you can rely on yourself. And when you can rely on yourself, the world becomes less frightening. You know that, even if things go wrong, you will respond. Even if you fail, you will learn. Even if you fall, you will stand. Even if the plan changes, you will adapt. That is resilience. And resilience is one of the greatest forms of wealth a person can possess. Because circumstances will change. Money can disappear. Jobs can disappear. Relationships can change. Markets can collapse. Plans can fail. Bodies grow older. The world is unpredictable. But if you have developed the capacity to adapt, learn, and begin again, you carry something with you that circumstances cannot easily take away. You carry yourself. That is why inner development matters. The strongest foundation for an external life is an internal character capable of carrying it. Imagine giving enormous wealth to someone with no discipline. The wealth may disappear. Give power to someone with no self-awareness. Power can magnify their weaknesses. Give fame to someone who depends entirely on approval. Fame can become a prison. Give responsibility to someone who lacks integrity. Responsibility becomes dangerous. So do not only ask for greater success, ask to become greater. Ask for the character to carry what you desire. Ask for the wisdom to use it well. Ask for the discipline to maintain it. Ask for the humility to learn. Ask for the courage to serve. Because success without character can become self-destruction, wearing expensive clothes. Ladies and gentlemen, there is another truth you must remember. You will never feel completely ready. If you wait until fear disappears, you may wait forever. If you wait until you know everything, you may never begin. If you wait until everyone approves, you will never move freely. If you wait for perfect conditions, you will spend your life waiting. Life does not usually hand you certainty before action. Often, action creates clarity. You take the step. Then you see the next step. You begin. Then you learn. You fail. Then you adjust. You move. Then the path becomes visible. That is how life works. The first step does not need to be perfect. It needs to be real. So what is your first step? Maybe you need to start studying. Maybe you need to apply for the opportunity. Maybe you need to launch the business. Maybe you need to write the first page. Maybe you need to learn a new skill. Maybe you need to leave a destructive environment. Maybe you need to repair a relationship. Maybe you need to forgive yourself. Maybe you simply need to stop saying, someday, because someday is one of the most dangerous words in the human vocabulary. Someday I will begin. Someday I will change. Someday I will travel. Someday I will write. Someday I will build. Someday I will become healthy. Someday I will tell them I love them. Someday I will become the person I know I can be. But someday is not a day on the calendar. There is only today. And today is where your future is born. You cannot live tomorrow today. But you can influence tomorrow through what you do today. Every decision is a message to your future self. When you work today, you are telling your future self, I cared enough to begin. When you study today, you are telling your future self, I prepared for the opportunity. When you exercise today, you are telling your future self, I respected the body I was given. When you tell the truth today, you are telling your future self, I chose integrity. When you refuse to quit today, you are telling your future self, I will not abandon you. What a beautiful relationship that can become. The person you are today can become the person who rescues your future. And one day, your future self will look back at this moment. Maybe not this exact speech, maybe not this exact room, but at a moment like this, a moment when you were given the choice, stay the same or begin. And your future will be shaped by what you choose. Ladies and gentlemen, your life does not need to be perfect to be meaningful. You do not need to become the greatest person who ever lived. You do not need everyone to know your name. You do not need to impress the entire world. You need to live in a way that allows you to respect yourself. Build something. Help someone. Learn something. Love deeply. Fox yourself. Keep your promises. Use your gifts. Take responsibility. Become wiser. Leave something better than you found it. That can be success. Perhaps the greatest success is not reaching a point where you say, I have everything. Perhaps it is reaching a point where you can say, I have become someone I respect. I have lived according to my values. I did not allow fear to make every decision. I used my failures. I loved people. I kept growing. I contributed something. I did not waste the life I was given. That is a success no trophy can measure. And perhaps, at the end of the journey, you will discover that success was never waiting for you at some distant finish line. It was happening every time you chose courage over fear, every time you chose discipline over distraction, every time you chose truth over comfort, every time you chose growth over stagnation, every time you chose meaning over applause, every time you stood up after falling, every time you began again. That was success. You just did not recognize it because you were looking for a medal. Ladies and gentlemen, there will always be someone richer, someone younger, someone faster, someone more famous, someone more talented, someone who started earlier, someone who seems to have everything you want. Let them. Their journey is not your journey. Your task is not to defeat every other human being. Your task is to become the person you are capable of becoming. That is a battle worth fighting. And it is a battle that never truly ends. Because becoming is not a destination. There is always another layer of yourself to discover, another weakness to strengthen, another fear to confront, another skill to master, another person to help, another truth to understand, another level of courage. Life remains alive when you remain willing to grow. So do not be afraid of changing. Do not become so attached to your current identity that you refuse to evolve. The person you were 5 years ago was doing the best they could with what they knew. Honor them. Learn from them. But do not let them drive forever. You are allowed to outgrow yourself. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to begin again. You are allowed to become unfamiliar, even to the people who knew the old version of you. Growth can feel like loneliness, because not everyone will understand your transformation. Some people preferred the version of you that was easier to predict. Some people will question why you changed. Let them question. You are not required to remain small so that other people can remain comfortable. But remember, becoming stronger does not mean becoming colder. Becoming successful does not mean becoming arrogant. Becoming independent does not mean becoming incapable of love. True growth expands you. It does not shrink your humanity. The higher you climb, the more responsibility you should feel toward those below. If you become successful, become useful. If you become wealthy, create opportunity. If you become powerful, protect people who have less power. If you become educated, teach. If you become strong, help someone who is still struggling. Then success becomes larger than personal achievement. It becomes contribution. And contribution gives success meaning. Because eventually, the question changes. When you are young, you may ask, how can I get? Later, you begin asking, what can I give? That transition is one of the signs of maturity. You realize that life is not only about collecting experiences. It is about becoming a source of something valuable: knowledge, kindness, leadership, courage, beauty, innovation, curiosity, opportunity, hope. Perhaps someone will remember you, not because of the amount of money you made, but because of the way you made them believe in themselves. Perhaps your greatest achievement will never have your name on it. Perhaps it will live in another person's life. A child you encouraged, a student you taught, a worker you gave an opportunity to, a friend you refused to abandon, a family you protected, a community you strengthened. That is success too. So dream. Dream boldly. But then examine the dream. Ask whether it is truly yours. Then make a plan. Then work. Then fail. Then learn. Then work again. Then grow. Then help others grow. And never stop becoming. Because success is not a finish line. It is a relationship with your own potential. Every day you decide whether to move closer to it or farther away. And nobody can make that decision for you. Not your parents, not your teachers, not your friends, not your enemies, not society. You are responsible for the next chapter. So write it consciously. Do not let your fears write it. Do not let your past write it. Do not let comparison write it. Do not let temporary failure write it. Do not let someone else's expectations write it. Take responsibility for the pen. Take responsibility for the page. Take responsibility for the direction. And if the page is already filled with mistakes, turn it. A new page does not erase the previous one. It gives it meaning. Your past becomes part of your story rather than the prison of your future. Ladies and gentlemen, one day, your life will become a story you tell. What will the story say? Will it say that you waited? Will it say that you were afraid? Will it say that you had dreams but never pursued them? Will it say that you spent your life trying to impress people who eventually forgot your name? Or will it say, I was afraid, but I moved. I failed, but I learned. I fell, but I stood. I doubted myself, but I kept going. I did not know the entire path, but I took the next step. I discovered who I was. I confronted what I feared. I became more disciplined. I became more compassionate. I used what I had. I served others. I became the person I was capable of becoming. That is the story I want for you. Not a perfect story, a courageous one. Not a story without pain. A story where pain became wisdom, not a story without failure. A story where failure became education, not a story without fear. A story where fear did not get the final word. Because your life is too valuable to be lived unconsciously. Wake up, look inward, look outward. Decide what matters. Then act. There is still time. There is still possibility. There is still work to do. There are still doors you have not knocked on. There are still skills you have not learned. There are still people you have not met. There are still places you have not seen. There are still versions of yourself you have not discovered. Do not let the present difficulty convince you that the future is empty. The future is not empty. It is unwritten. And that is terrifying, but it is also beautiful. Because an unwritten future means possibility. So take your life seriously, not with fear, with reverence. You have been given a limited number of days. You do not know how many. That should not make you hopeless. It should make you awake. Call the person. Start the project. Write the book. Learn the skill. Make the change. Apologize. Forgive. Belove. Love tray. And if you fail, begin again. If you succeed, remain humble. If you become lost, return to your values. If you become afraid, remember why you started. And if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of something meaningful, wondering whether you are ready, remember this. You may never feel ready, but you can still be willing. Willing to learn, willing to work, willing to risk rejection, willing to become uncomfortable, willing to change, willing to discover what lies beyond the limits you once believed were permanent. That willingness can change everything. Because somewhere beyond your comfort zone is not necessarily an easier life, but it may be a larger life, a more conscious life, a more meaningful life, a life that belongs to you. Ladies and gentlemen, do not measure your life only by what you have accumulated. Despiosh it by what you have become. Do not ask only, how much did I achieve? Ask, who did I become while achieving it? Do not ask only, how many people know my name? Ask, how many lives became better because I lived? Do not ask only, did I win? Ask, did I grow? And perhaps the most important question of all, did I have the courage to become myself? Because that may be the deepest form of success. The world does not need another copy. It needs people who are awake, people who think, people who work, people who question, people who create, people who serve, people who confront themselves honestly, people who refuse to let fear determine the size of their lives. And you can become one of them. So, go forward. Not because you are guaranteed victory. Go because the attempt itself will transform you. Go because your potential deserves a chance. Go because your future is waiting for your decisions. Go because there are people you may help. Go because there are things only you can create. Go because life is too short to spend it permanently hiding from your own possibility. And when you finally achieve something you once thought impossible, do not stop there. Pause. Look back. Remember the person who was afraid. Remember the person who doubted. Remember the person who almost quit. Thank them. They brought you here, then look forward. There is more becoming ahead. Because success is not the moment when you finally become worthy. You were never waiting for worthiness. Success is the lifelong process of discovering what you can become when you stop running from yourself and start walking toward your highest possibilities. So think deeply, live consciously, work relentlessly, love courageously, fail honestly, learn continuously, and become deliberately. Your life is not an accident waiting to happen. It is a responsibility waiting to be lived. And the next chapter begins with one decision. Choose to begin. Then choose again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, until the person you once dreamed of becoming is no longer a dream. Until the life you once thought was impossible becomes your ordinary reality. And then, when you stand there, not at the end, because there is no true end to becoming, but at another summit, you will understand something profound. The greatest success was never the money. It was never the applause. It was never the title. It was never the victory. The greatest success was that you became fully alive. You met yourself. You faced yourself. You lost yourself. You found yourself. You built yourself. And you gave something of yourself to the world. That is success. Not simply having a life that looks impressive from the outside, but having a life that feels true from the inside. So go live that life. Go build it. Go earn it. Go discover it. Go become it. And when fear whispers, stay where you are, answer, I was not born merely to remain where I started. When failure whispers, you are finished, answer, I am still becoming. When doubt whispers, you are not enough, answer, I will grow. And when life asks you what you did with the time you were given, let your answer be simple. I showed up. I tried. I learned. I loved. I worked. I grew. I served. I became. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a life worth calling successful.